There's a new AI-powered robotic arm that actually lets the hand detach from the arm, crawl across the room, fetch the object, crawl back, and reattach itself. You forget these robots can have such different form factors from humans. I'm sorry, but can you imagine how creepy that would be? I'm just so not sure I'm ready for the next 20 years, honestly. But in the present day future, The Office has now been refilmed using AI to include world leaders, which makes it pretty funny, I guess. I definitely feel like they're giving Trump the Dwight treatment. China has unveiled the very first intelligent robotic shark. Imagine AGI in that thing. It's going to dominate the aquatic food chain. There's a new AI model that plays Counter-Strike called MLMOVE, and it can mimic the movement of professional human players to the point where people think it's a professional human player. Archaeologists have used artificial intelligence to uncover over 300 new geoglyphs. Basically, these massive ancient artworks that we've never understood before. China made a breakthrough in artificial intelligence by learning how to train a model over different data centers. Like, forget about political drama, because now we have artificial intelligence versus scientists facing off in a debate-style competition to see who can come up with the best ideas. There's these new micro robots that can actually fold like origami into these tiny shapes to crawl around in weird ways. Now that there's over 1 million developers using OpenAI's technology, they have a plan to, ratchet up the price between now and 2029. Have you ever looked at a wall socket like this and thought it looked kind of like a person being like... That's called Pareidolia. We're going to look into whether or not AI vision models that look for faces see stuff like that too, or if that's just a human phenomenon. There's a new brain mapping study which might show a signature for depression, which would be a really interesting find and something that maybe AI could be tuned to notice in the future. I'm going to ask ChatGPT what an ion drive is, because I really don't know what it means, and I feel like all sci-fi people use that term a lot. So you can be here with me while I do that if you want. And we're going to talk about the probably small chance, but not zero, that there used to be very much a lot of life on Mars that all died off and completely got sucked in from tectonic plates and stuff, and now there's no evidence of it on the surface. But first, let's check out Alan's conservative countdown to AGI, and although we are still at 81%, like the last time we checked, there has been an update. So contributing to this 81%, he talks about DeepMind's Alpha chip, which is the new AI method that has been built to accelerate and optimize chip design. So designing a chip layout is not a simple task. Computer chips consist of many interconnected blocks with layers of circuit components, and they're all connected by incredibly thin wires. So in a way similar to DeepMind's AlphaGo and AlphaZero, which learn to master the games of Go and chess, Alpha Chip is actually thinking about the design of these chips in a similar way and trying to win the game. So I think Dr. Allen is seeing this sort of exponentially growing chart of how quick Alpha Chip can design chips, which are then going to make the AI training processes faster and faster, and it's all part of that exponential just explosion of AI we're probably about to experience. And look, I know you've all been waiting for this. A robotic hand where the hand, when it can't reach for something because it's not long enough, can just let the hand detach, use the fingers to crawl across the room, grab the object, drag it back towards the arm, reattach, and then pick it up. I mean, I don't know what to say about anything except that, yeah, from a computer robotics point of view, that's a really interesting design, and there probably are use cases for it. But if I am hanging out in the future with these humanoid robots and their hands just detach, crawl across the room, and get something, I'm going to freak out, and it's going to freak me out, and that's just that. And I don't want to see the limbs flying off these robots and becoming their own robots and doing their own thing. But here we freaking are. The hand gets laid down on the table, detaches from the arm, and just starts crawling towards the object. Oh my god, are they all going to come together like hundreds of those and they all become some super hand monster when we're not looking? Look at that. You grab the mustard with one side, you bend the fingers the other way to grab the chips. Detach and crawl like a crab. What in the world are we building? I mean, it's interesting. It's creative. It's outside the box thinking. I understand that it can be done, but just... you just designed Thing from the Addams Family. I did kind of think that, actually. Yeah, why design extra parts and waste energy moving the entire body when you could just detach the hand? Makes sense. That's what's kind of even more creepy about it, is it does make sense. But I don't know if I need to live in a world where things make that much sense, to be honest. All right, speaking of nonsensical entertainment, What do you guys think about The Office, except you use AI to deepfake the same style of humor, the same basic characters, but with political leaders in their places? All right, let's see what we got here. Looks like kind of going for the Michael Barack Obama thing. Hillary Clinton, kind of the Pam. What's Kim Jong-un in there doing? Oh, man. Oh, you got Bernie Sanders in that office room? That place would be crazy.
That's what she said.
I don't know. Maybe we'll have comedy like this. You know what I mean? If you think about The Office, it's really funny, but it's more about the style of the way that the storylines play out. And if that can be, you know, efficiently simulated in real time by something like a ChatGPT for the storyline and something like a diffusion video model, and it can have some character consistency, like maybe we can just be like, hey, give me an episode of Friends, but make it with my literal friends, and maybe it'll have all of that same style with like the laugh track, and like the future of entertainment is going to be crazy. See, the comments are saying that I need to see an episode like this. I mean, it looks engaging. Waiting with held breath for this adaptation. The world would be so much easier to deal with. I do know what you mean. Like, it would be easier. I do wish world leaders kind of had this playfulness to their goals. This is a gigantic robotic whale shark. China Aerospace Sciences came up with this thing, and what can you say? Like, that thing could definitely be swimming around in the ocean. Gosh, outfitted with advanced sensors, optical cameras, positioning systems, this robotic whale shark is built for navigating complex underwater environments. So like in the same way that we're seeing these robotic drones, self-driving cars, yeah, sure. If you have a fleet of these, like, I don't know if it's military, I'm sure the military knows about this, but if you just start dropping 1,000 of these into the ocean, you have them interacting with other sharks, seeing what happens, collecting data when it bumps into things, like reinforcing better behavior, you're going to end up with one of these whale sharks that is just so real, and it's gonna be hard. Maybe this is like the future of submarines, like military submarines, because if radar pinged that thing, would it even know that it was not a robot or a submarine or a weapon? And if you keep making the model smarter and smarter, and we get to the point where there's artificial general intelligence, maybe even artificial super intelligence, and its objective function is to be a shark, like what if it teams up with a bunch of real sharks and it acts so perfect that it fits into the do they hunt in packs? I can't remember if they hunt in packs or if they're like lone soldiers or whatever, but wherever they fit into the sea life hierarchy, this thing could figure out the best place to be and be the best shark ever. And maybe artificial super intelligence ends up as a shark, and then it becomes completely conscious with shark objective functions, and then we, like, who knows? Because, yeah, I always think about humanoid robots taking over, but what if, you know what I mean? Like, what if we make all these other robots for all the other animals on the earth, and they all become superhuman too, or like super shark? Coolest thing ever, and everybody's so creative. Thanks, Don't Mention Me also. Maybe with a real shark inside. Whoa, what if? All right, next, let's talk about a new AI model that plays Counter-Strike. Now, I'm not really like a PC gamer myself, but I definitely know that like cheating in these things is very frowned upon. And if you want to, you know, cheat and get away with it, there's a lot of little mods and a lot of ways people need to check. And now it looks like there is some AI that can move around in a way that's so realistic that people won't know that it's an AI moving around. Which has two things. Like, one, for competitive play, that's going to be kind of scary. But for games where you can usually clearly tell who the NPCs are, this might be the beginning of, like, you know, one-player gaming that feels truly like multiplayer gaming. Bots in games like Counter-Strike typically don't pose much of a challenge for pro players, but MLMOVE could change all of that. Stanford, Activision, Blizzard, NVIDIA, University of Washington, and Cornell all came together on this Counter-Strike project. Now, for you Counter-Strike players, I'll let you go to the comments and let me know if you think they're acting human or if they look pretty robotic to you, but from what I see, it seems very human. As a non-player, here's how they actually describe the proportion of time that the player spent in different regions of the map and how it thought. This was aggregated from about 1,500 game rounds, and the heat maps of the human players and those of the MLMOVE players show a lot of similarities. And in these self-play experiments, they also looked at the distribution of player position, instances of teamwork and game outcomes between human and bot play. So yeah, imagine it's gonna be hard to spot bots. And imagine they're using like voice synthesis too, or text to speech that sounds superhuman, like the new ChatGPT voice chat. you're playing against an AI, it's sounding like someone you can talk to, it's talking in real time, it's acting like another player. Like, how are you gonna know? You're not, and you might just accept it because it's somebody to play Counter-Strike with right now. Archaeology and artificial intelligence, the old and the new coming together to discover a whole bunch of new gyroglyphs. They're kind of like hieroglyphs, but I guess they're just general geology glyphs, and they are pretty fun to look at because these are newly discovered figures that date back to 200 BCE. All right, so this is artificial intelligence being used by archaeologists in Peru. The new geoglyphs depict animals like parrots, monkeys, and even humans. Now, they were able to use AI to speed up the process dramatically. So the AI was analyzing this vast amount of geospatial data that was collected from drones that kept flying over the area. And then the AI model was trained to identify patterns and shapes that are difficult for the human eye to spot, especially the more like subtle geoglyphs that had been previously missed because the human eye just looked at it and saw just nature or like wear and tear on a stone structure or whatever. But just the attention span of humans is limited, and the speed that we can look at through these kind of geospatial data at is limited. So having an AI that can just sift through very quickly all of this drone footage allowed us to find all these cool archaeology finds, which I think is really neat. Like, that's a very interesting use of AI. Okay, for the next article, just to keep you up to speed, there's something kind of interesting happening between the dynamics with the United States and China. Like, we have access to NVIDIA and some of the best AI hardware companies in the world. And of course, having access to that level of hardware to put in servers can help the models be trained faster, which can help them be more advanced. So in the interest of the United States, they're putting like tariffs or blocking like the best and most advanced GPUs leaving the country, which kind of makes sense, I guess, in a way. But then on the other hand, when you're someone like China and you were depending on those and you're buying those and you want to be the number one in artificial intelligence, you're going to look for ways around that, right? Totally makes sense. It's just geopolitics. And China thought, well, what if we can actually not have the most advanced GPUs, but we can have maybe a little bit older GPUs, but also be the first to understand how to train one giant model over a much larger computational space, meaning multiple different service centers. So it has been reported that they are now able to train generative AI models across multiple data centers and different GPU architectures, which is crazy to think about because maybe in the US we end up with this like mega data center that comes out of like OpenAI and Oracle and Meta and Google. But in theory, if the government of China can help get multiple data centers all under kind of a government control and they can train over one giant cluster, that might outdo the competitive nature that we have in the United States. But then again, maybe not. So it's, I'm not saying that's guaranteed to be the way to AGI or to be AI supremacy, but still, this is a step in a direction that should, maybe the United States should take notice of this. So as it says in the article, because of this uncertainty, Chinese researchers have been working on melding GPUs from different brands into a single training cluster. By doing so, the institutions could combine their limited stocks of sanctioned high-end and high-performance chips like the NVIDIA A100s with less powerful but readily available GPUs like Huawei's Ascend 910B or the NVIDIA H20. And this technique could help them combat the high-end GPU shortage within China. So yeah, and we'll see how that all ends up going. Getting very competitive out here with these two nations facing off. But if you want to talk about face-offs, not geopolitical, not regular political, but more AI versus human scientists, then I have the article for you. Singularity Hub has written this article, AI and Scientists Face Off, to see who can come up with the best ideas. So this is a study from Stanford, and it is exploring whether or not AI could generate research ideas like human scientists. So they did a face-off. They pitted large language models, similar to ChatGPT, against human experts in AI research and idea generation to see who could do better. Now, we've seen a couple things like this when it was like AI was doing comedy and humans were doing comedy, or writing scripts, humans, AI. But in this case, when it came up with new ideas for original research, AI did come up with more creative, out-of-the-box ideas. It was ultimately the humans that were still the winners. They came up with ideas that were seen as more feasible. So I can imagine this, like just imagining how GPT responds to me. I could see it coming up with a really interesting idea, but instantly being like, oh, that's unrealistic because of just the way institutions work or the way research works or the way that you proposed it. It just is missing that certain natural human element that I can execute on. Now, I'm sure over time these models will get better, so I'm not saying it will always be like this, but for now, the study found that AI can help spark novel concepts, but it sometimes, hallucinates, confabulates unrealistic ones. But you know what? Maybe some of those outside the box, crazy, unrealistic ideas would also help a human think, that's a little too far, but if we scaled that down, it could be doable. Which is another way to push creativity and great ideas. All right, let's talk about micro robots that fold into cool origami shapes and move around. So Cornell researchers have developed a tiny robot. It is smaller than a millimeter and it can morph from a flat 2D sheet into a 3D shape and it can move around. So thanks to a design that is inspired by kirigami, which is kind of like origami, but it's from a meta sheet, which means that they're robots that are made of interconnected silicon dioxide panels. And when activated with electricity, they can fold and expand to crawl or wrap around objects or move in various ways. And a little bit of AI in there to think about how you should actually use the electricity to move these in the most optimal way means that future versions could combine this flexibility with electronics to create materials and responses and actions to incredibly fast stimuli, and they would be actual mini biomedical devices or machines that could respond to their environment. I could see them being used for environmental monitoring, maybe wearables, maybe small enough to get into the body and deliver drugs or payloads in certain ways. All right, next up, let's talk about OpenAI. Famous Sam Altman, CEO. Got lots of thoughts on him recently. But OpenAI, which burns money very fast, they are creating world-changing products, no doubt about it. Probably worth the investment, in my opinion, but still, that's a lot of money, and it doesn't have quite a lot of deliverables yet. And they recognize this, and they want investors, and they want the investors to know that they're going to make money eventually and make their money back. So OpenAI now has plans to double ChatGPT's price over the next 5 years, and they are targeting a $100 billion in revenue business by 2029. So yeah, OpenAI is aiming to more than double the price over the next 5 years, and they are projecting massive revenue increases. So these are from documents that have been prepared for potential investors, show that OpenAI's revenues tripled year on year to 300 million in August. Monthly users jumped from around 100 million in March to about 350 million in June. So OpenAI expects ChatGPT to bring in $2.7 billion this year. About $1 billion of that should come from the business. Over 1 million third-party developers are also using OpenAI's technology. OpenAI plans to increase from $20 to $22 by the end of the year and potentially up to about $44 within 5 years. And then, of course, where does OpenAI usually spend all this money? Well, they certainly have some extremely expensive payroll. Some of the most expensive people, developers, AI technical people in the world work there. But most of it actually goes back to Microsoft. Microsoft is who they pay the bills for all of those servers. All right, now let's talk about Pareidolia. AI Pareidolia. It might not be a word you know. That's when you see faces and things. Like you've seen people cut trees in half and be like, oh my God, it looks like a face. Or the front of a car or a cloud or a bag of popcorn. We see faces in so many things. And there's kind of an evolutionary reason for that. It's healthy for us to see faces very quickly. That could help us see lions, tigers, animals, other people from a distance. And if we're wrong and it's just a bunch of, trees or waterfalls that look like a face for a second and our eyes dart to it and it's not a person or an animal, no problem, we're still alive. But if it was and we saw them a fraction of a second quicker, we could react quicker and we might be alive today. So I think there's an evolutionary reason why we see them so quickly. But we're also training AI to be very good at seeing faces too. That's exactly what visual AI is doing, computer vision. So the question is, does it also have the same problem we do with pareidolia? So MIT researchers are starting to explore this. They created a massive data set of 5,000 images showing fake faces to train AI algorithms, revealing key insights. So unlike humans, AI initially struggled with recognizing these faces that weren't really faces, but it did get better when trained to spot animal faces, which suggests that there might be an evolutionary link to this. But you can push it too far. The study also identified something called a Goldilocks zone, like the perfect area where images have just the right complexity to trigger pareidolia. And the researchers could actually improve AI face detection with potential uses in fields like robotics and product design because of it. Imagine being able to automatically tweak the design of a car or a child's toy to look friendlier. Or you could ensure that a medical device doesn't inadvertently appear threatening. Stuff I hadn't thought about before, but yeah, I suppose an AI model, you could build something like Grimlock, you could put it into an AI and say, make it look a little more menacing. Grimlock, imagine you were designed to look more menacing. Okay, gosh, it was just a suggestion. You could have been designed a little differently. I mean, I'm not saying I could have been designed differently too. You know what I mean? It's fascinating how humans instinctively interpret inanimate objects with human-like traits. For example, when you glance at an electrical socket, you might immediately envision it singing, and you can't even imagine how it would move its lips. Algorithms, however, don't do this naturally. They don't recognize these cartoonish faces in the same way we do. So there's a new brain mapping study that seems like it's starting to maybe pinpoint depression's signature in the brain. So a big breakthrough in understanding it came when scientists used precision brain mapping to study the brains. They had 135 different people, all with depression, over a year and a half, and they found that a specific brain network called the salience network nearly doubled in size in people with depression. It's interesting. I kind of thought something would be shrinking, not growing, to cause depression, but maybe that's just not the right way to think about it. Now, this network is meant to help us focus on important things, and its expansion could be a marker or even a predictor of depression. Interesting, a larger salience network was actually detected in kids before they developed the condition. But I can imagine, AI bringing us personalized medicine. I could see how this new tech would help personalize treatments by mapping each person's brain and its unique changes over time. Actually, that's one thing we haven't talked a lot about, but if artificial intelligence did take brain scans of you when you were a child, it could go back in time potentially and put together links of how you've changed over the years. And if there were times in your life when you were like happier or maybe even just younger and sharper and where you are today, and it can see how they're changing, and we did that across lots of people, there would be a lot of patterns in like what leads up to certain diseases or the way people think. That would be a wealth of interesting information. I'm sure that's coming. People are working on it when all that data gets unified at some point. All right, I'm going to use the new ChatGPT 01 preview, and I need to know what an ion drive is. Like, I have this vague understanding that ions are like atoms, but they have extra electrons, I think, or maybe they have less electrons than they should. So they're like variants, but they're still like elements. And then there's supposedly something called an ion drive that we can build these rockets behind, and they could be like better than any other fuel. And I have no idea how that works. So I'm just going to ask ChatGPT 01, help me out, because I feel like I'm not living up to my sci-fi nerddom if I don't. So what is an ion drive? How does it work? All right, so we know it's a propulsion system, so it's something kind of like an engine that moves an airplane forward, but it's for spaceships. And unlike traditional chemical rockets that burn propellant to produce thrust, ion drives generate thrust by accelerating ions. And this method allows for highly efficient propulsion over extended periods, making it ideal for deep space missions. While they cannot replace chemical rockets for initial launches from Earth due to their low thrust, they are essential for the sustained propulsion needed in the vacuum of space. So an ion drive is a super efficient rocket engine for spacecrafts that use electricity to shoot out ions, charged particles, instead of burning traditional fuel. Basically, it takes gas like xenon, knocks off some electrons to make ions, and then uses electric fields to accelerate those ions to insanely high speeds. Oh, it's like a particle accelerator, and then it like shoots the particles out the back end to push the spacecraft forward. So yeah, an ion drive will run out of fuel. While it's incredibly efficient compared to traditional rocket engines, it's still a finite supply of propellant. All right, now I was gonna say now you know, but you might have already known. Now I know, or we know. Next up, let's talk about an article on Medium written by Avi Loeb, and it is called "No High-Rise Left Standing from Early Mars or Earth." It's just worth thinking about because it's like a fun possibility. I don't know if you should give it much credence. I don't want to pretend like this is like for sure something that's worth believing, but it's possible that Mars actually had an advanced civilization a billion years ago. We could be on Earth because of panspermia, and we might have just recently in the last, 100 years or so started to get the technology to really learn the intricacies of Mars, and there might not be enough evidence for the technological level we're at to discover it, but it could be there and we might discover it soon. Doesn't necessarily need to be something you could see with a telescope or even a rover, because if it was a billion years ago when Mars had an advanced civilization, I mean, I guess we could think about it something like today's modern society, maybe even less advanced or maybe more, or whatever. Over a billion years, it might have all got destroyed just by the tectonic plates, by the movement of bombardings from like asteroids hitting the planet. You know, just covering it up. Like if we dig into the dirt of Mars, what if we find like real technology or some kind of advanced civilization, even if it's something along the lines of like orcas or dolphins or primitive primates, maybe even all the way up to where we are, just dealing with the beginning of understanding like concrete and more advanced communication. So in this article, he's speculating how if Mars had, you know, rivers and ponds and early life evolved there faster than it has here in an advanced society, could have risen and fallen and be pretty much evidence-free from the technology that we have right now. And that's because volcanic activity over a billion years pretty much does like recover the planet with sediment. So we'd need rovers to dig in really deep to find something if it was a civilization like ours. A billion years from now, no humans, like if all humans if all life on Earth just disappeared right now, a billion years went and somebody came to Earth and there was still no life on Earth, they would probably not see anything. Asteroid impacts, volcanic activity, that white and tectonic plates can just can just remove all of that evidence. Then he goes a little bit further to be like, if they did go into space, maybe that's why we see UFOs. I don't know if you need to go that far into the article, but interesting thought that like we really haven't explored Mars enough to truly know that a billion years ago they didn't have an advanced society. I mean, they probably didn't. It's probably just hearsay, but it's kind of interesting to think that that's a possibility. All right, next up, I wanted to vibe on this archive paper. It's called A Mathematical Framework of Intelligence for Consciousness Based on Riemannian Geometry. All right, so what's interesting about it is this is a paper that requires you to think about a mathematical framework that can lead to consciousness. So it describes intelligence and consciousness using Riemannian geometry. All right, and if you think about all those normal geometric things like triangles and how they make perfect angles, if they're bent a little bit, like you take a triangle on a sheet of paper and you put it, you know, on a sphere or a saddle or in a Euclidean plane, you end up with slightly different angles, which throws the whole thing off. So this paper is conceptualizing intelligence as a token, right? So it's one of those tokens, like a word fragment in a large language model. It's in a multidimensional space. It has a measurement of distance between all the other tokens, and that's where the real magic happens to its output. So in this model, those intelligence tokens are also embedded in a high-dimensional space. They form a geometric structure called a manifold. And they claim that thought is something that flows along these manifolds, similar to how a path follows a curve on a surface. Maybe a little bit like how water would flow through a river, but actually that's probably not good. Yeah, I think just how a path would follow a curve on a surface, because you wouldn't want to think about gravity. Well, maybe you could. Yeah, maybe it is kind of like the way space is malleable like that. But anyhow, whatever, it's a curve, and consciousness is the curve, right? Consciousness is seen as a self-reflective process that monitors and adjusts its thought flow based on the prediction error, so it's always trying to find the best fitting curve. Like, is it like, maybe it's like the free energy principle, the active inference thing, which is that whole other way to think about AI. It's an interesting mathematics. It seems like it's a rigorous mathematics, right? And it describes what causes learning, that adaptation as it reshapes to the manifold. And to me, at least it's testable. At least it seems kind of rigorous. You could probably go in and measure distances to find out if that's really what consciousness and intelligence is. So this theory aims to unify both the static structure of intelligence, which is how knowledge is organized, and the dynamic nature, so how thinking evolves, into a single mathematical framework. But it's a fascinating paper, and for those of you that are watching this video and are like way smarter than me, maybe you could give this a look and throw in the comments what you think. Is it legit, or is it just kind of out there? It's called the Mathematical Framework of Intelligence and Consciousness Based on Riemannian Geometry. I want to say thank you for helping boost up that last video. We had another one break 8,000, which is always like a really good sign. That usually means that we're getting new subscribers. Let's go check out the analytics. Whoa, 87 new subscribers. I remember when getting 100 was just like months of work. So thanks for that. Especially $44 is starting to make, well, it's not like, the videos aren't like worth it yet in the sense that I make enough money to do them full time, but still, I appreciate that. That's on its way, and I see the growth, and I can imagine where I could be in another year. So there was a clear winner on the thumbnail ABC test, and you definitely liked it more when it said AI News, which is interesting. There was one video suggesting me afterwards that brought me the most traffic by far, like jumps, wow, all the way to 1,000. What is this video? Oh, Theoretically Media. This is Tim. Wait, did he link to me, or is it just a coincidence that afterwards? So Tim's like one of the first AI guys that I actually like met in real life, and he's like introduced me to a lot of people. So I have like a lot of love for Tim. Huh, yeah, that's cool. Well, great. I would love to be associated with him. So let's go check out the comments, see what you guys are saying. Whoa, 13 replies to this one. A world where more seems to be invested in artificial intelligence than actual intelligence. All right, you're going to make the song? Oh, a lot of responses to this. The singularity will be an economic collapse. Seems required in the process. Governments are always reactive bodies by nature. Yeah, it is true. To govern ahead of something, there's not many times that's happened in history. Agree the collapse is necessary for the new model to assert itself. Let's see, people arguing about doomerism again. I need one more. People without a sense of humor should think twice before hiring a comedian. Look, that's just good advice for everyone, so we'll put that in there too. Oh, dang it, I forgot to talk about Patreon. I keep meaning to do that earlier in the video too. So anyways, if you're made it this far, you want to support the channel, I would love to make a living doing it, so I'm still kind of like growing to that point. You saw how much money it makes per video, not enough to live on yet, but Patreon means that I get some recurring income. It definitely supports me, and if you message me through Patreon and you're a Patreon, or you hit this join button here, you can do it through YouTube too, that's fine. And I recognize that you're like really supporting the channel. Like I'm definitely going to be always there to like respond or answer questions, or you know, maybe include articles if you send me interesting stuff. And now together, let's enjoy this new wonderful AI music creation done by Suna.
Governments are always reactive bodies by nature. People without a sense of humor should think twice before hiring comedians.
Join the Patreon, hit subscribe, leave a comment. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.